Okay, everybody, if I could ask everybody to settle down. Happy New Year, 2024. Make sure your checks are written properly. January 10th, we're going to have a budget committee with the agenda. It's a pretty full agenda, so we'll get right into it. First item is the approval of the minutes, December 13th and 20th. Does anybody have any comments that you want to offer?
I do.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Meeting minutes for Wednesday, December 20th, page 3 of 5. I believe, I didn't look at the recording, but under sewer, third to last paragraph, that just before that, I asked about considerations for alleviating staffing shortages by considering closing the transfer station on a particular day. I referenced Sunday to great agreement of the entire committee as a possible day or another day. And Bob, I believe, replied that would not be popular, and he made note that trash was left at the transfer station entrance on some days in the recent past when the station was closed on Sundays due to staffing issues. I think it's important to include that because the comment that followed was, if asked, have we a traffic count for the transfer station, Bob replied, no. I think it intimated that we might look at traffic counts by day, by hour of day, and that could be done to validate the need for the days and the hours of service, or possibly present an opportunity where we might think about altering expense. So I can provide that language back to you to add to the minutes, but
I don't understand.
I think...
What is it you want? Just, you want us to mention that there was discussion about the need for traffic counts?
No, there is a statement on the bottom of page 3, second from the bottom. If asked if we have a traffic count for the transfer station, Bob replied, no.
Okay, so you want
Prior
that.
to that,
Under transfer station has that discussion.
okay,
The part where it says the transfer station is fully staffed and having it open on Sundays helps to ease the traffic flow on other days?
yes, and that's my mistake, and I thank you for the correction. That was the intent also behind the
Right, sometimes
question.
things happen out of, like, we had already passed on the transfer station. I think the comment came later. I think we can move it up there if that would make it,
I think that makes sense, and I think, Colin, that was your question, if it was...
so we can move it up to the
Raised.
solid waste, to transfer station discussion?
I can do that.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other comments on, let's take it one at a time, on December 20th?
20th?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
what
I do
we're
have
working
one,
on. Go
but
ahead.
I wasn't there. Present. Yeah, I have one. Yeah, they counted me as present. I was on vacation.
Thanks, Lou. Anybody else have anything for 20th? John, no?
Not the 20th. Did you
Okay.
do the 13th?
No, not yet. No, Charlie just jumped into the 20th. So now we'll go to the 13th. Anybody have any comments on the minutes for the 13th?
Well, yeah,
You're,
oh, yeah. Yeah, on page 2, third line down, it says, for unexpected expenses, including property appraisals, the community meetings. Is that what it's supposed to say?
I think the word "and" should be inserted, perhaps.
Okay. And very, very simple, further down on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where Charlie Kelsey starts the paragraph. Fourth line down, it says, NHRS is not fully funded. That's all.
Anybody have any other comments? I just have a comment for clarification purposes on page 3, end of the second paragraph regarding the item that says it was noted the town would need to add infrastructure in order to have hybrid and electric vehicles. I don't know what the nature of the hybrid SUV is in Hanover, but some hybrids don't require any infrastructure. They're just batteries and they get generated by the car moving. Some hybrids are plug-in, so that may or may not be true depending upon what car you purchase, just for clarification. May need is probably a better wording, yeah. Okay, any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve the 2
So moved.
weeks with the noted changes?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against, abstentions? Okay. Bibi, we're moving over to you.
Okay, I've got a full page here. At our meeting last week, the selectmen heard from Jamie Hess, Chair of the Energy Committee, regarding 2 items. I believe Kim sent all of you Jamie's memo regarding, first of all, the purchase of the solar panels, and the second was the meeting of the commitment to the goal of achieving 100% renewable electricity by 2030. I'm sure this will be part of the conversation next week on the capital reserve accounts. And all 3 selectmen agree that we would like to see the purchase of the solar panels happen, as well as the goal of 100% renewable electricity use by 2030. We likely will be discussing future financing options at our next selectmen's meeting next week. Second, we also heard from Steve Solomon from the Library Board of Trustees regarding the need for funds to complete the roof work on the library ahead of the original estimated date of 2028. They are still waiting for estimates to come in, but they're estimating approximately $275,000 for the roof, and would like to combine with approximately another $100,000 of other outside repairs that need to be done. They asked us to do a bond. Bill explained that it's up to us to come up with the funding mechanism. Bill submitted a proposal on funding the capital reserve account for the library using the initial request of $1 million that we put into our budget, and then adding another $150,000 to that number. Again, I'm sure this will come up next week in our discussion on the capital reserve accounts. The selectmen voted on a 2% COLA increase for the town's employees. That decision, along with the decision to bring all employees to the 75% amount in the range coming from the wage study, has been reworked in the budget documentation that they all have, right, Lynn? We had a placeholder in the budget of $150,000 for this purpose, as you all know. The funds needed for those items came in under that $150,000, so that placeholder has now been removed and the changes have been made in the department budgets. It was brought to Bill's attention that the selectmen hadn't voted on some recommendations for the capital reserve accounts, so we did take official votes, and I believe Kim has given you all a list of the items that we voted on last week. We denied a request by the Conservation Committee to open a new trust account for trail maintenance types of projects. The amount was only for $10,000. We're hoping that an amount that small can be put in the budget instead of into a trust account. And finally, a petitioned warrant article was presented to the Board of Selectmen that would ask that $900,000 be raised to acquire the property located next door to the police station and also be used for some updates to the current police station. I believe that a copy of this warrant article has been submitted to all of you for review. Lynn has added the $900,000 to the revenue projections that we'll be talking about tonight. This warrant article isn't on our agenda. The warrant article itself isn't on our agenda to talk about tonight, so perhaps it can be for the next meeting. And of the Budget Committee, the selectmen have not yet discussed the petition or voted to recommend or not recommend it yet. We'll likely be discussing that at our next meeting next week as well. That's it.
Anybody have any questions for Bibi?
Nice.
No? Bibi, I have a couple. So and they may, actually, one of them might be Kim's. The $150K that was distributed for purposes of the COLA, so the 2.5% is about $90K. What was,
2%.
2%?
Yep.
So it's actually less than that. So where did the rest of the money get distributed to? And will that be represented in the budget that we
Yes, they're in the various departments. So people who got raises, those labor lines, the wage lines are now increased. So if you would look at the budget you got tonight versus the one that you got originally, you'll see differences in those budgets.
Wages over and above the merit?
Yes.
Okay. So all 150K was used?
No.
It was under the 150. Lynn says 132,000 was needed to do all of that.
Oh, okay, so the rest, okay.
The rest is nowhere.
Got it, okay. Okay. Thank you. And I know that Bill talked about, and I know we'll talk about this next week, but just for clarity. And I do want to talk a little bit about the reserves in the other business segment, but I don't think that we've got represented in the sheets Bill Helm's
No. It's not.
proposal, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we won't have that to work off of next week.
Maybe next week.
Okay.
Maybe. I'm not making any promises on behalf of Lynn.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking we
No,
might
because
talk about.
you meet after them.
Right, we
so-
do.
They meet on Friday.
If we meet
Oh,
on
right.
Friday, then
If-
the Board of Selectmen should talk about it on Thursday.
Okay,
And
fine.
then and then Lynn can add it into her thing. But did you send Colin that proposal that Bill made for the library switcheroo?
Yeah, but so I saw Bill's written comments.
Yep,
What I think we should have in front of us is the spreadsheet,
yep,
right, that lays out the million plus that he's suggesting where money goes.
yep.
Or alternatively, we're gonna define our own, but having something
Yep.
might be worthwhile, right?
Yep. Got it.
Okay. And if there's an inability for whatever reason, then we'll just do our own and hand it over to you guys. Okay? All right.
Okay.
Okay, Kim, before we get into the budget reviews, do you want to just give everyone a highlight of what you handed out today? So we know.
Okay, so you should have two packets. This blue sheet that you have kind of summarizes what you have. The first packet is the stuff that you'll be looking at tonight, for the most part. The top page is tonight's agenda. The next piece is the list of budgets that you're reviewing tonight. It matches up with the agenda, but I also added the budget page and the amount that they've requested on it. You also have the meeting minutes, which you've just approved, and then you have the revenues. The revenues are updated. The biggest one is the $900,000 bond, and then there are a few other smaller things that Lynn can address when you get to revenues. The second packet is more of what you'll be doing at your next meeting. It's the comparative budgets to date, the updated budget worksheets, which include all of the employment things that we talked about. The $150,000 is gone, and it's spread out throughout. And then the materials that were reviewed at the Selectmen's meeting on January 4th, which was the votes for the Selectmen on the capital reserve funds, the library capital needs as prepared by Bill Helm, and then the comments from Jamie Hess that were made at the Selectmen's meeting. And finally, the longer sheet is the capital reserve spreadsheet that Lynn did with some CIP items. You'll notice on the bottom, there's some CIP notations.
And I'd like to just put everyone on, we'll have a conversation in the other business segment about the following meeting on reserves, what those other items are for, and, because, full disclosure, I asked Lynn to do that, added to the bottom, so I want to make sure people understand why I did that, okay? Okay, so budget review, social services organizations, Chamber of Commerce. Anybody here to speak to the Chamber of Commerce? Kim, do you have some thoughts on that?
As with last year, the Chamber of Commerce has requested $15,000. The Selectmen did not approve that amount and kept them level funded. Hopefully, everybody knows there's a little chamber. The information booth is what the chamber runs, and this money goes to man that information booth in the summertime so that people who come to visit New London can get information on attractions and directions to various places.
Do we have anyone have any questions on Chamber of Commerce? Okay, Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Planning Commission for $7,097. Anybody here for that? Anybody have any questions to be put on the page for follow-up? Kim, go ahead.
Anybody has questions, this is the group that we get assistance from, planning assistance. They also run the household hazardous waste that we have in New London. Once every 3 years, it travels to different towns. They do circuit rider services, planning issues. They do studies throughout this area, in the area of planning.
Yeah, they also are helping the town with the drafting of the 5-year update of the town hazard mitigation plan that should be coming up with a federal grant of $10,000.
Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, Kim, do you know what other towns in our region are contributing or have been asked?
For the RPC?
Yeah,
The RPC are a state group. Newbury is also in our RPC.
okay.
So we're in the kind of Upper Valley part, even though we're kind of on the fringes of it. But all of the towns, they can choose to be members or not, and I believe that most towns in their area are.
Okay, so we don't have a delineation of,
I don't have the list of how much everybody pays, no.
okay.
I think it's really something that the town has gotten a lot of value over
Oh,
decades.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Any other questions?
I do. So I am wondering, we got letters from everybody explaining, a little bit more about what they do, why they want the money, but there's no letter or anything to read for the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Planning Commission.
Should
So-
be. Yeah, there should be one in your book. If it isn't, it could be just missing, but
Then I
from Megan Butts, she's the executive director. But if it isn't in there, we just missed it. It could be it came in late when we were switching things, but Peter Nichols works with them quite often, too. He may have some comments.
Peter Nichols, I'm one of the representatives to the Regional Planning Commission for the town. I'm also on the Housing Commission, and they are lending us great support on the housing side with our planning. We have what's called a regional navigator that's funded by a grant through the Regional Planning Commission that includes Wilmot and Newbury. Formerly included Sunapee, but they dropped out. And so we're getting support from them, and as a representative for the town, I'm looking for ways that we can utilize them and their services. So I think the number of towns in total is about 30, and there are about 20 or so that participate with funding. Obviously, if you're a town and you don't provide funding, you don't get much support, but that's the background.
Thanks, Peter. Anything else? Okay, let's go to New London Hospital. Good evening. Is it green?
And there it is. Derek Ahman, Director, New London Hospital Ambulance.
Hi, I'm Lisa Cohen. I'm the CFO at New London Hospital.
Does anybody have any questions for New London Hospital on their submission?
We did provide a packet that I hope that you all have, but I have extra copies if you need it, that speak to the calls that we provided to New London in the prior year and our costs.
We all got the packet.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I would say that the vincles that we have between the town of New London and New London Hospital are a key reason for the enormous quality of life in this town. Without the hospital, we would basically shrivel up as a community. Just recently, a good friend of mine passed away from renal cancer. You may know, who he is, but It was the value added of the ambulance, the value added of our emergency services, the value added of the new critical care, emergency care, is absolutely essential to the life of this town, and I am 100% in favor of your budget.
Thank you. Thank you. We greatly appreciate the partnership of the town of New London. We are just so grateful for everything that you do for us.
Anything else for the hospital? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Anybody here from COA?
Is this on? Yes, this is, I'm Rob Prohl, and I'm chairman of the board of Council on Aging, and I'd be glad to answer any of your questions you might have. And certainly, if anyone would like to sign up to contribute to COA, we're always looking for new people because most of our revenue comes from fundraising. And we thank the town for the support in the past.
And thank you for what you do. Anybody have any questions for Rob? Melissa?
Just for clarification, so you're asking for $38,500 and you have 2.5 paid employees, that's pretty much where your money goes?
We have two now. We actually cut a half a position in order to reduce some of our expenses, because it's always a challenge to get the revenue up to meet our expenses.
So they are 2.5, you said 2, yeah?
Right.
Okay, so they're splitting that $38,500?
No, our budget is about $245,000. And so we also raise, I mean, most of the money, I think we get $72,000 from all the towns, and these are all the towns that in our Kearsarge area, and it's based on the number of people that come from the towns. So our executive director, sends out requests to all the 7 towns in the area. And we have our town has the largest number of people. We have almost 2,000 people out of the 3,000 that are using COA come from New London. And most of our volunteers also come from New London. So we're very thankful for the support that this community has.
Anybody have anything else?
I don't have a question, but just to comment along the same lines as what Lou said about New London Hospital, we're really lucky to have COA. I met with Kelly, Keith, and Kim to talk about some things when I first came on the board, and I was amazed by all the stuff that they're doing. You guys are running a really great operation down there. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I echo those. When you look at the lending program of mobility equipment, is saving thousands of dollars for individuals who may not be eligible for any other sort of assistance. And the COA has for my colleagues on the board, the COA has a fairly large supply of mobility assistance equipment, from wheelchairs to canes to crutches. And of course, you guys are going to end up plussing up because you need to do significant construction, so you are in a bind. I know that financially. I've been a driver for a COA, and it's really it's another one that needs to be funded.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, Lake Sunapee Regional VNA. Anybody here representing them? Anybody want to put on the record any questions for their follow-up? No? Okay. CASA? Anybody here for?
I'm Charlene Baxter, and I'm a CASA volunteer. I'm Clara Sheehy, and I'm also a CASA volunteer. I guess we just want to say that we just learned today that we serve 13 families right now we represent, and that encompasses 27 children from New London that we are advocating for.
I think in addition to that, there are 3 CASA volunteers who live in New London, but we work with families all over the region and, in fact, all over the state. In addition, there are families that are affected. They may not live in New London, but grandparents do and aunts and uncles do, and so these are children who are related to our citizens who are getting help from CASA, and we appreciate the help from this town.
We certainly do.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you both for what you do. Appreciate it. Community Action Program. Anybody here from the Community Action Program?
Hello, Beth Hayward, not Leah. Your letters from Leah. She has moved on to the state. Very excited for her, sad for us. This is Faith. Faith is replacing Leah. I'm sort of the in-between. I used to do it, so some of you may recognize me. First, we just want to say thank you to New London. You guys have supported us forever. If I go back, it's years and years and years. And we could not do what we do without the 38 towns supporting us in the 2 counties that we serve. We are asking for $6,000 again, level funded. Last year, we provided about $64,000 in services between fuel assistance, electric assistance, and then other smaller fuel assistance. The emergency rental assistance program is now ended, but we did put how much this past year? 6 enrolled households for $77,000. We're just letting people know that that is what the town received. It's done, it's over. We're sad, but we're just making sure towns understand that that's what it was, and next year you will not see that. We also provided $11,000 in food to the KLS food pantry. So I don't know if anyone has questions for us.
Anybody have any questions? Please, Melissa.
Quick statement. Again, thank you. And I just want to make sure that every representative here understands that a lot of us have heard and appreciated and valued and understood your service and what you guys all provide. So our lack of questions is not a lack of support. So,
absolutely.
Well said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, New London Garden Club.
I'm Sandy Schmid, the co-president, the new co-president, and Suzanne Hammond is the other co-president. We really think New London is a beautiful place, and we do our best to keep it that way and to help keep it that way. So I'll answer any questions if anyone has. We appreciate that the town recognizes the work that we do and appreciate the grant that we're asking for.
I think you guys do great work. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, Melissa, go ahead.
So 1,500 is not a huge amount, and our dues are pretty low. I have to, full disclosure, I am a member of the Garden Club, and I also would like to just point out that the post office is a very visual place for most people, and I would like to see something a little bit more. I would be interested in adding a fixture, not permanent fixture, but I do have some ideas with driftwood and weaving to make like a snowman that could start in November and go through December and be prettier than, not that we have snow this year, but usually it's very piled with snow. And I think I could lift that snowman up and make it a better scenery for a very long time, months and months during the winter.
We will be discussing this, obviously. I think it's a beautiful idea, personally, but we have not brought it up to the board yet, but we will be.
Will that idea be, are you going to be putting in a motion to add more money into that budget when we get to that point in our schedule in a couple weeks?
No, but I just want to support the 1,500 as it is now. I think after I address the board, then maybe we can ask for more money in another year, because my idea does need to be built. Has to be handcrafted.
See, this is the kind of enthusiasm that we love at the Garden Club. I got to tell you, it's really great.
I will tag with what Melissa said. I'm not a member of the Garden Club, but I will tell you, the first day that we came to New London looking at a place to move for quality of life, we looked at the fact that New London is a gorgeous, beautiful New England town, and in great part thanks to y'all.
Well, the post office is one of 14 what we call pocket gardens, where we have teams that maintain what they look like. They put in whatever is planted there, and it's the team that comes each week to make sure that it's watered and deadheaded and weeded and stuff. And then at the end of, usually the beginning of October to mid-October, we then take everything away. And so that's why you don't see anything in the pocket gardens right now. It's just the perennials that are there, because we do add annuals each year, usually.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. Okay, Lake Protective Associations. Do we go through each one of the, is it a separate person? Yeah, Messer Pond?
I'm Audrey Chisner, president of the Messer Pond Protective Association. What our funding goes to is the Lake Host program, and you're familiar with that. And so basically, we've been in this program since 2007. We consider it important. It's the first line of defense in preventing the spread of non-native aquatic invasive species to our waters. And we appreciate your help in funding that program.
Do we have any questions, comments? And we appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Pleasant Lake Protective Association.
I'm Charlene Baxter again. My husband and I coordinate the Lake Host program. It's a very visible part of our community. So many people launch boats at the boat launch in Elkins. We have appreciated the support from New London. This year, we staffed that boat launch with 4 lake hosts from Memorial Day through Labor Day. From 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening. They examined just shy of 2,000 watercraft, both motorized and non-motorized. They had a very successful season in that they did not have any fines, if you will. They did not find any invasives that were about to launch into the lake, but we have to be vigilant. All of our lakes do. I think it's important to realize that there are water bodies closer to where we are that include Massasecum Lake, Mascoma Lake, Connecticut River, the Merrimack River, the Kentucky River. There are boaters in those bodies of water that come here, so it's a really important program. You have supported us with $7,000 in the past year. We're asking for the same. Our total budget is $18,000. $3,000 of it comes from the New Hampshire Lakes Association, $8,000 from our own Pleasant Lake Protective Association. Thank you for all of this support. It's critically important to what we do. Any questions?
Questions? No? Thank you so much. Little Sunapee Protective Association.
I'm Kathy Thomas. I'm the treasurer of the Little Lake Sunapee Protective Association. Our situation is very similar to Pleasant Lake. The Lake Host, we're asking for $7,000 to support our Lake Host program. It represents about a 65% of our total budget, of about $18,000. that goes toward the Lake Coast program, and so it's pretty much the same as the other two groups that have come forward. We're very grateful for the support you've given us in the past.
Any questions for Kathy? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now the Lake Sunapee Protective Association. Oh, sorry. Right? Nobody, they're not here? Anybody want to put any questions or comments on the record for them? Okay, let's move on to the Health Administration. $6,367. Anybody representing them?
I support everything.
Okay. It's great.
Yeah, what she said, right there.
Safe travels.
I'm the Deputy Health Officer, so I'm happy to answer any questions about the health budget. Our health officer is Nick Bear, Dr. Nick Bear. He does septic inspections. New London's a town that you must have the test pit observed by a health officer, so he does that. He does water testing. And anytime anybody, sometimes homeowners or renters or something have issues, health issues in the places they reside, they'll contact Nick.
Any questions for Kim? If I may, I just want to go back, there was in the budget, there's something that wasn't represented on your sheet called care of trees.
That's our,
So is that, who does that? And, I mean, it's not a material lot of money, but I just want to make
Dave
sure.
Carey is our tree person,
Yep.
so he will come up with a list of trees in consultation with Bob Harrington. They prune trees.
Yep.
If they're not healthy, then we'll take them down.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're covering the budget, so anybody have any questions in that regard? No.
What, 4,000?
4,000, yeah, it wasn't material. Okay, why don't we move on into Welfare Administration?
I think it's on. I'm Celeste Cook. I'm the welfare officer. I've been the welfare officer for quite a while. Welfare is very fluid. We never know what to expect year to year. Last year was horrific. It was the worst year I've had. I went way over the budget, and it was all in housing. That's the biggest issue. So I think that we're asking for some more money this year. I think last year I spent $26,000 for a budget of 16. I have no idea what will go forward. So, it's something we have to do. If anybody has any questions? Yes.
Evie?
Celeste, I assume that the cancellation of the Community Action Group rental payment assisted program is having an effect on your...
Huge.
Can you talk to that?
Huge. They ended the program this spring, I think, and that had paid rent for people to live in places. It's over. So the town has picked a lot of that up. And it's not coming back. That money will not come back.
Is that included in this $25,000 budget? The $25,000 amount that you requested?
Is what included, the community...
The rental payments?
It's all rental.
Okay.
It's mostly, this past year, it was all rental.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
And there's no other state programs that are available to at least fund partly the unhoused individuals?
I'm not aware of any. Are you?
No, it's, yeah,
This
so
is-
federal COVID funds are gone, the housing assistance is gone, so it's the town.
And the housing is very expensive in this area, if you can even find it.
Would you make, from your experience, would you say that we will have additional situations in the next year substantially, or?
I have no way of telling you that, Lou.
Okay.
None.
I think if I could follow up, I mean, obviously we want to help people, so when you run over the budget, I assume the town is accommodating that overrun somehow, right? So, I think the question is, you've got a forecast here as best you can, and you're sometimes struggle with meeting people's requirements, so the town's got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You fulfill an incredibly needed service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Celeste, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Kim, there's a welfare administration and welfare vendor payments. Both of those are,
Right. Celeste mentioned the vendor payments,
Yeah.
that's mostly rent,
Yeah.
would be electricity.
Yeah.
Yep, so it's two different sections.
yeah. Okay, recreation?
Good evening, my name is Putnam Kidder, and I am the Recreation Director, and I am here to present our budget for the fiscal year of 2025 and to field any questions anyone might have.
Anybody have any questions?
I do. I have 5 questions. Staff wages, which are for waterfront staff, significant increase. Can you talk to that?
Yes, so we have lifeguards and then beach attendants. And so we are doing our best to try to stay competitive to get quality staff and returning staff. So we're trying to offer competitive wages for our staff. And then also this year, we are planning to have 7 days a week open at the beaches. In the past, we've had 6 days a week. We started 7 days a week last July 10th. And so we want to have them fully staffed 7 days a week because that's what the public would like. This year, we are proposing a increase in $1 for our attendance to try to make that more appealing to kids to come work at the beaches. And we are in competition with other local employers that are having to raise their wages as well to try to get more kids to come. So we're trying to help out and get quality, trained and loyal staff that come back to us, but then also we can get new kids as well. And when places are paying $20 for people who come and start, that's a hard thing to compete with.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Computer license, is that an allocation, Kim? And so that's associated with all software support, which I thought. Elkins Beach equipment is of significant increase. Is there a need for additional equipment?
Elkins Beach, the increase is for a proposed metal picnic bench there. The wooden picnic benches there are in rough shape, and we lost a couple that were no longer usable this summer. So the hope would be to try to replace the wooden ones with metal ones that last longer. So that's the plan to try to do that over several years. So
I see. Have you considered transferring any of them from Little Lake Sunapee to Elkins? Because there are a significant number at that beach, at Buckland.
that's certainly something we could consider. I know people, when it's busy, they are certainly used, and sometimes people will have events there. They'll host a birthday party or things down there. They like to have them. So sometimes if we try to shuffle them back and forth, people might say, where they all go, but that is something to think about.
Yeah. Right. Conference training expense is a significant number, higher than many of the other budgets, department budgets. Could you talk to that?
Yep, so the conferences and training is to provide in-service for our lifeguards. We hope to do, ideally we would do 3. One in the beginning of the summer, and then one in the middle of the summer, and then one towards in early August, so that we can have our staff well-trained and current on all their skills for the lifeguards. And so it's a really great way to have them work with our local emergency providers to be able to see who they would be working in case of, who would they be working with in the case of an emergency. So it's that, and then also that is a cost that we have to try to reimburse the lifeguards for their fees to get licensed. As to be a lifeguard, you have to have a certification, and that ranges. If they're recertifying, I think it's $180, and then if they're doing it for the first time, it's about $300. So as an incentive to our employees, our staff, we will cover that cost for them.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Do you have AEDs in?
We do,
in
at
the-
both beaches, yep. And we need to, the pads the pads we have are expired, and we need to, that's something we're putting in for lifeguard and swim supplies is replacing the AED pads.
Okay, and all your staff is trained in
They all do
CPR
CPR
and
with
life-saving?
AED, yep.
Okay.
The lifeguards have that. The beach attendants, they don't have that, but the lifeguards do.
Have you ever thought about beach attendants being trained, and so you have a lot more versatility?
That's something to consider.
Any other questions for Putnam? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to patriotic purposes,
Any questions?
$300.
We're searching for a group, and I think we may have a group soon that is going to take up the flag, if you will, of doing something with the patriotic purposes. Used to be Bob McMichael and Elkins for years and years, so I think we do have a group that contacted me to ask me about how they would go about it, so I let them know that they just need to submit the plan to the selectmen of what they would spend the money on, and so I think we will be spending the $300 more regularly.
Okay. Archives. Anyone have a comment or question they want on the record for archives? No? Okay, conservation. Bob, you're up.
Thank you. On?
There you are. You're
On?
good now.
Okay, perfect. A meeting wouldn't be complete without giving you a very, very brief update on the Philbert-Crescenti bog situation. As you know, we are completing Phase 3 of the walkway project. The spruce loop to the west is complete, both aluminum walkway and wood walkway, including railing where needed. And our goal for next year is to complete Tundra Loop, which is a larger loop, but fortunately will require much less aluminum, which is the real expense. There is, however, significant wood work that has to be done. As you know, what we have done so far has been done with private funding. We have requested no taxpayers' dollars. And what we have spent is significant. We really need to finish this next year, and that is our plan. If we count a year of planning, this will be our 5th year. And I must tell you that a lot of people have worked very hard. We do have 30 miles of other trails to maintain, and we have weekly groups, volunteer groups out doing that work as best they can, weather permitting, and that's been wonderful. There's a tremendous amount of volunteer work that's been done in the bog. One of the biggest parts of it now is moving the material on site. You know, it's getting to be a long ways to carry all this lumber in there. So that is where we are. Our plan is to finish this up. We raised enough money to buy the aluminum. We're working on the wood. And we hope to be able to finish that. We have an absolutely expert intern who will be with us now for the 3rd year. He possesses carpenter skills that we had no idea he possessed. And if you look at the workmanship in there on the wooden walkway, he's doing a really, really nice job. Our supplier in Vermont with the aluminum walkways has been excellent. That material is all on order for Phase 3, and it will be on site, tentatively, the first, second week of June. So that's where we are there. Our budget, our operating budget this year did increase. And there's a reason for that, other than general inflation. Not that we neglected our other trails, but there's a little bit of catch-up to do here and there. We normally keep a medium-sized inventory of lumber up on sticks so it can dry, and so it's easier to handle and easier to carry. We need to catch up on that. And again, this is largely volunteer. Our increase, we requested about another $10,000 above our normal in the low 20s. That was adjusted by the Selectmen down to about an $8,000 increase, and we can live with that. We will do our very best. One of the problems that has faced us this year, and it's really a serious problem, and this may be a discussion we want to have next week, but just to make everyone aware of it. We periodically have issues with wetlands, and most are caused by Mother Nature. They can be aggravated by wildlife, but we have flooding, we have lodges that are built that restrict the flow of water. We have had some serious problems over the years. Chandler Brook that flows into Pleasant Lake crosses Route 11. We've spent time and money down there trying to keep it open and freely flowing. It is a state highway, but they never seem to have any money. And, you know, it's one of those things that you can't talk about it for 3 months. It's got to be fixed. So the Conservation Commission has kind of assumed that responsibility, but we're not budgeted for it. We've had really serious problems over at Job Seamans and the lagoon area behind the old middle school. We had to put a caster master device in there and spend a ton of money to control the wildlife activity. It was quite successful. However, it requires constant maintenance, and we're just not funded for that. The latest development has been, and it's been ongoing, you never know where these things are going to happen, where all the activity is going to be. It changes from year to year. But Messer Pond, which is Bog Road, down to Clark Pond, there's a marsh in between that's commonly referred to as Clark Creek. There's a lot of activity in there. Vegetation, animals, and that water has to move, and it's not moving. It's a little complicated. We have had some experts come in and look at it. We have some ideas what to do. We've done a lot. The water's moving, but not moving properly. When the water backs up, it impacts a bunch of things, starting with flooded basements, flooded yards, exceptional weed growth, property values. There's just a lot involved. So we have been absorbing these things, and our budget's pretty tight. This fall, we spent $1,700 that we absolutely did not have, but we had to do it in order to keep the wildlife under control. And this also impacts aquatic life, fish life. If the water's not moving, it gets stagnant, and the fish don't do well. So Fish and Game has advised us what we need to do, and the problem is we don't have the money. Now, we could, I guess, request an increase in our budget, but we don't know really exactly how much we're going to need. What we had proposed doing, and apparently this idea wasn't widely accepted, but we thought if a reserve fund could be established that would not expire at the end of the year. In other words, it could be carried over. We could put a sum like $10,000 aside. If we need it, we use it. If we don't need it, then it stays there for the future when we might need it. And I guess what we heard back was the selectmen didn't think that was such a great idea. So, okay, we're wide open. What do we do? But we really need to do something, and we'd rather not put in a request every year and maybe not, probably not use it. So is that a discussion for next week?
I think generally, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but don't leave yet. Anybody have any questions for Bob on the operating budget? Bob, I just had one. I know the select board took 3,000 out of your proposed operating budget.
Yes.
And you're indicating that you'll live with it. Is there something that you're going to be sacrificing as a result of that reduction?
Probably. Just to give you some quick numbers here, when we started this project, we said we would give it our best shot to do private funding, which we knew nothing about, never done it, no expertise. We tried it. And the first thing we learned right away is it's not easy. And we have now, going into 3 years, we have raised about $90,000 from residents, friends, companies, corporations, a couple of trusts. That was wonderful. The balance, about 2/3 of this, has come from the Mary Haddad Fund, which we request as needed. And that has covered about 2/3 of this expense. So although we don't hear much about the Mary Haddad Fund, clearly, if that fund was not available, we could have never done this project. So when we finish up, there's a lot of thank yous that have to be, put up and promoting the generosity of a lot of people that have made this happen. So although we did raise the funds to order the aluminum, we're not going to stop. We're going to keep fundraising. And if you've gone to the bog, you'll notice there's an updated kiosk. We even have a little piggy bank donation box. And believe it or not, that generates some money. So, another thing to try. So we'll play it by ear if our volunteer labor keeps up. What we don't want to do is not finish this and let it go another year, because I think enthusiasm's starting to diminish. It's hard to put a happy spin on carrying a truckload of lumber a half a mile into the woods. I mean, there's not much fun in that. But we have people that will come out and do it, and that's great. Without them, all of this wouldn't happen. So it's been a wonderful project, a lot of positive feedback, but we do want to finish this, and that's why we feel it's important to have this $8,000, which would be pretty much one time, and then next year, hopefully, we go back to the low 20s.
Just for the rest of the team, and when we get into the other business segment, there'll be some other items I just want to surface for our consideration. But I went to the select board meeting last Thursday, and one of the ideas I raised there, and I raised it with them, I wanted to get their reaction, and it was not negative. I think Janet thought it was a good idea before I brought it to the table and to you, Bob. And something I wish that you might consider with your colleagues in the Conservation Commission is there any way we might want to consider changing the definition of our conservation reserves bucket? Right now, it's designed to...
This is the land acquisition.
Land acquisition,
right.
Is there any way we can change that definition to include, I'm just going to use words, I don't know what the right words are, we can work it out, sort of infrastructure upgrades, not typical trail maintenance or ease monitoring, but a project like the project you have down at the bog that requires infrastructure. Is there a way we can go into that fund and pull money out of that so that you're not chasing your tail trying to figure out how to make that money? So if the Conservation Commission is willing to consider those revisions and we can work out wording accordingly, we could present an article on the warrant that would redefine how those monies could be spent. That would give you flexibility to address some of these issues.
Yeah, it certainly sounds worthwhile to look into. I know this subject came up once before, and I'm not sure a long time ago where it went, but I think there's an RSA that governs that fund and how the money will be used.
Yes, whatever town meeting states the purpose of a fund is, that's what.
Okay, so the town meeting could change it?
The purpose, yes.
Okay.
So think about it, and we can talk about it next week if you want to talk to your colleagues in the Conservation Commission, but, I know that it's there for land acquisition. Land in this town is becoming increasingly more expensive, and I almost wonder, notwithstanding you're collaborating with other land trusts, our ability as a town to go purchase land of significant quantity with the monies that are there is going to be limited. So maybe we could put some of that money to use to help the infrastructure you're trying to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So you think?
So we had just, putting some words together when we first talked about this. We talked about a wetlands emergency fund that would basically cover acts of nature, whether it be storm or animal activity and that type of thing.
So, again, I don't want to occupy this week's meeting, but it's something that if you guys are willing to think about, I'm sure that we can collaborate on the right wording. It could be the wetlands issue plus some of the infrastructure issues like the Crescenti Bog one. Again, not typical trail maintenance, right? I mean, that's something your volunteers will do, but.
With the bog fundraising, we have made that very, very specific. It's for the improvement of the walkway system. And we did pledge right from the beginning that every penny we raised would be used for the walkway, not for advertising or anything else, but it would be material and labor if necessary. So I think if there's controls on something like this, just as long as it didn't get out of control,
So we'll talk about it more next week. If you want to talk to your commission
Sure.
colleagues and come up with maybe some of the thoughts of wordings that you would want to direct some of that money to, we could probably work with Kim to build an article on the warrant that might give you some flexibility from that budget.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right? Good. Anybody have any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Energy? I don't think. Any comments or questions for energy you want to put on the record? Housing? Peter, are you speaking to housing?
Peter Nichols on the Housing Commission. We've been working diligently trying to address the housing crisis that's in New London and in the state, and in fact in the country. We have hired a consultant who's helping us to look around and see what's working in other towns in New Hampshire, seeing how different rezoning attempts and language works, and also looking at new ideas, thinking a little outside of the box so that we're keeping our eyes open. We individually have attended, Adam has attended also Northern New England Planning Organization sessions, conferences to learn and stay connected. It's a deep issue that we need to address as a town, and that's where our funding has been going. We did request $15,000 for the prior fiscal year, and we're asking for the same amount this year.
Anybody have any questions for Peter?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't know if you're the right person, but could you tell me what's happening behind Pizza Chef? Or it looks like there's a building being built. Is that apartments? Is that housing? Is that
I can tell you what I know. Just to be clear, the Housing Commission is not a housing authority. We are an advisory committee to the Planning Board and the Selectmen, trying to think of ideas and make recommendations for regulatory change to encourage the development of affordable and workforce housing. I can tell you what I know about that, which is that I believe it's 5 rental units now under construction. I don't know their completion date. Maybe Kim has an update. I do know that originally it was planned to be 3 units, and because of the zoning change that was put into place, it now is 5 units of rental housing. I don't know what the price range is going to be, but it's going to be on the market, or market rate, I presume. That's all I know, I'm sorry.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Peter? Thanks, Peter, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for our budget. We're going to flip over to revenue for the time being. If you want to get your pages out and I suppose maybe rather than going line by line, unless people want to go line by line, maybe we'll just open it up to questions.
Colin, I had a question.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
It just might be a basic accounting. I was just wondering why the estimate for meals and room revenue is so significantly lower than previous years, both for 2024 and then 2025. It's on page 2 about
Yep.
Midway.
Yep, well, we always try and go in very conservative because we don't know what we're going to get. We have no way of calculating what we're going to get, so we go in fairly conservative on that number. And as you can see, in 2021, we got 200,000. They surprised us. This year, we actually got a lot more, but it does fluctuate significantly. This year, we got 415,000, so.
Okay, so in 22 and, let's see here, 23, were we not doing estimations? Because they're only off by about 75 cents or $5.
No, see, what you're seeing there is that in October, with the Board of Selectmen, I adjust the revenue.
Okay.
And then I'll adjust this. The DRA comes in and tells me what I'm getting that year. They adjust the meals and rooms tax for me. So that's why on the budget, it looks like it's a match, like we hit it on the nail on the head, but we didn't.
Okay.
So I think, keep me honest, Kim, so the revenue is a guesstimate based on some good historical data, obviously, and it doesn't get finalized until a later date. That helps us determine the tax rate.
Right.
I personally, and obviously I'm only one person of a 10-member board, so I personally think it's important for us to better understand it so we can appreciate the risk associated with revenue, because if there's a risk around the revenue, then that's going to have an adverse impact on the taxes, right? So I think we should appreciate that as we're thinking through the expense budget. So if anybody has any questions like Lindsay's on that, I have a few, but I'll conserve them until the end. Anybody have any questions on the revenue budget?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Charlie.
The highway block grant has decreased from 415,000 to 130,000.
Right.
Fairly
Many-
significant.
Yeah, many of these state amounts are generated, they come from the state of New Hampshire.
Yep.
So depending on what their budget is, they apportion these funds to the towns and cities. Sometimes we get an additional amount, like we have for highway, I think a couple of years in a row, they'll give us additional funds. So it's all a matter of the legislature, what they put in the budget.
Okay.
It's sent to us, so as Lynn pointed out, in October, we generally have much better idea as to how much we're going to get with all these things. And so we put in a closer figure.
Okay. Generally speaking, help me understand rates. So we have the ability to set a rate, for example, for dispatch that we charge the other towns. Is this budget reflecting any change in dispatch rates?
No, the amount we have in the revenues assumes that we stay the same way that we are currently billing. The selectmen will decide prior to sending out dispatching bills if they want to change the formula for how they set it. So what we do is we get the budget, the estimated budget, and then we guess at what percentage the town of New London will pay. We usually keep it right around 67%. That's where we usually are, 64 to 67. And so then we estimate the revenues that we will receive from those other towns.
When does the select board set the rate? You said when they distribute.
Well, usually in the
bill?
summer, because we send the bills out in November. So if they're going to change the rate, they have that discussion, and they'll say, you know, we need to contact the towns, or we're going to change the rates.
Even if it's outside of the town's fiscal year. So they would not have planned for a rate increase because they wouldn't have known about it.
Who?
Is that any of the towns that we
Well,
charge?
the towns would know. If we were going to change the way we charge them, we would let them know in the summer, some months before. They get the bill in November, and then they put it in their budget for the coming year.
So we're able to look at rate adjustments and informing towns that would be affected by those rates far enough in advance for them to consider it in their budget process.
Right.
Okay.
We would want to give them as much notice as we could. If the selectmen were going to change the rates, we definitely would go. There was some years ago where Chief Lyon and Chief Cobb, well, it wasn't Chief Cobb, but it would be her now, and one of the selectmen went to each of the towns to talk about the dispatch service, to hear from those towns as to how they felt the service was rendered.
Yeah.
So we do have a good communication with the towns because we want them to stay as one of our customers.
Yeah. So as a new person on the Budget Committee, do you look to the committee, does the Select Board, BB, look to the committee to make recommendations on fees rates that would affect the revenue budget for the fiscal year that we're evaluating? Or is that something is out of our hands?
The Budget Committee? As far as I know, at least since I've been here, the Budget Committee has never given the selectmen any guidance on that. I don't know whether when the selectmen talk about rates in the summer, any Budget Committee, certainly I've never seen where the entire Budget Committee has talked about rates and offered any opinion on it.
Okay. Why do we look at it?
Charlie, are you asking specifically that question with respect to the dispatch or just general?
Both.
Okay.
Because there are other fees. There are, fees here and there. Some are small, some are larger. And if we can generate revenue, we can address some of our 12.5 budget
Sure,
increase.
like right now, let's say
So-
you decided that perhaps land use change tax, maybe you would say, well, we
Yeah.
really think you should increase this to 100,000. You certainly could put that amount in tonight or
Yeah.
any night. Again, the selectmen, when we get to October, and they see, well, we really haven't had too much land use change tax, they would reduce it.
Okay.
This document now is important because if you were to increase or decrease it by a lot or unreasonably, it would look like the tax rate would be higher or lower, depending on
Right.
what you do.
Right.
So what we've done in the finance office has always been fairly conservative because we don't want to put a large amount of money in here now and then give an estimated tax rate which is lower than it really ever will be. That wouldn't be fair to the voters. Go to town meeting and say, the tax rate's going to be this, and then come October, we have, we slash the revenues and the tax rate's really higher. So, but certainly, I think that if any Budget Committee members, or as a group, if you have ideas as to how we can increase revenues, certainly I'm sure the selectmen would want to hear it.
Okay, thanks.
Lizzie?
Thanks, Kim. I think that kind of lends into my initial question over the meals and rooms estimation, which I understand we want to be very conservative, but we're looking at a $180,000, decrease from, the average from 2023. And I wonder if we couldn't at least allocate or estimate more from that revenue, 100,000, and then put the additional into a capital reserve fund, such as the sidewalk project.
Well, it sounds like you want to do two things. One, you
Yes.
want to increase the revenue, which you can increase any of these or decrease as you see fit. That's not a
Yes.
problem. But if you want to put money into a capital reserve fund, that's a warrant article that you'd have to put in to say, raise and appropriate X amount of dollars to go into the...
Correct, but I'd just like to leave like a little map for taxpayers to see where I came up with that number in the first place and why it's not just superfluous. It's an actual dollar amount that we
You
have.
would have to say it comes from the general fund or the unreserved fund balance.
Okay,
Because, we put in rooms and meals tax, and I've never seen where it's been slashed very much, but the state could do whatever they want, right? We're estimating this amount, they could actually come back and say, you're going to get 50,000. I don't think it's ever been that low in New London, but they could.
So I think, let me summarize, Lindsay, if I may, so that we're on the same page. If we grew the revenue 100,000 and did a similar amount of cost increase in reserve funds, and all that went through the town meeting and got passed, if the revenue didn't materialize, then we would be down 100,000 in revenue, and at the quote-unquote deficit, if all things being equal, right?
It's kind of a gamble,
Yeah. So I think that my opinion is those are the kinds of conversations we should be having, and bring that proposal to the select board. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
But can I add, though, that when we go out for the tax rate, that number's an actual number. It's exactly what we're going to be getting when we go out for the tax rate.
Sure.
So we can't set it where we want to, go out for a tax rate, and think we're going to have the extra $100,000 if, you know what I'm saying? The Meals and Rooms tax is a hard number when we go out for the tax rate.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just looking at historically, it's been higher than the estimated number has been for the past 5 years. So that's where I was kind of leaning towards, can we make that recommendation? And
Well, I can raise it now, but it's coming down in October if we don't get it.
right, if we
Okay.
don't get it.
Right.
I'm just saying historically we have. I'm just
Okay.
going off the past 5 years.
Listen, it's a function of risk, right? And if you take a look at past performance, the risk of what you're saying is low, right? And if you look at some of these categories, and I can appreciate it, we are conservative, but that's a conversation we should have. Do we have a list of the fees that the town charges in general for all the services that it provides to the citizens? And when was the last time we reviewed the fees that we charge our citizens? I'm sure some of you know by now that I've done my own benchmarking. I've perused multiple databases. One of them is Hanover. The town manager in Hanover spent some time at their select board or council meeting, I don't know what they have, what kind of government they have, reviewing a presentation on revenues. And one of the things that he was reviewing is the last time that the town of Hanover actually went through and adjusted its fees. So it begged the question in my mind, how many things do we charge our citizens for? When was the last time we looked at those fees? And is it time that we should look at them? And that's something we're going to do. This goes back to put that into the bucket of things that, geez, if we had time, we'd be able to do it. But since we only have like 3 weeks left, we can't do it for this year. So that, in my mind, is a bucket item for the process change. All right, what can the Budget Committee get involved in with staff on fees and revenues? And what does that do for us? Comments?
Yeah, again, I think that's possible. I mean, I think the fees that we have control of, like building permit fees, those are a big one. Now that we have commercial building permits issued by the state, we've reduced. We don't get that money anymore. So that's one area. I mean, I think some people think that, our building permit fee is lower than it should be. We have looked at those in the past, and they haven't gone up. Trying to think about, like, this building. We spent a lot of time looking around other towns to see about how much we should charge to use this building. And most of the people who use this the only groups that can use this building are nonprofits and government organizations. So those nonprofits don't have a lot of money, so they balked at the amounts we were charging. So now we have a rule that you can use it 4 times for free. So I suppose if the selectmen rolled that back, that'd be a way to get revenue. But there hasn't been a lot of desire to sort of hit up citizens to pay more when they're already paying through their taxes for various things. So, I mean, I think fees have been looked at. We're pretty cheap on our copies. I think it's 25 cents still. I mean, we try not to stick it to people who come in looking for their assessment cards and things like that. So, yeah, there could be things like that, but I don't know that the amount of money you'd get back. Building permits was a big thing, but again, we don't do those bigger ones. It was the commercial ones that really generated money. The biggest income we have are motor vehicles. There's no way you can do anything about motor vehicles, although you could raise the amount of money for the $5 you pay. What do you call it? For the transportation enhancement. When you register your car, there's an additional $5. Well, the law changed, and we can charge more. The selectmen did consider that and did not bring it to town meeting, but that is one way you could get some more.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions on revenue? I do have a couple of questions for Chief Cobb on the dispatch. Just to preface it, again, it's going back to revenue risk. And I think that it's worthwhile. Chief, you mentioned during the cost conversations about how you're going to distribute the 50,000, 55,000 of the new software program and how that gets distributed. So I wonder, and you made a comment about some of the towns may not want all of the capabilities. So how is that going to play out? I know that it's not going to play out until October when the select board looks at dispatch fees, but the current revenue stream doesn't include any of that 50,000 in it, correct? Okay. And I'm just thinking ahead as it relates to the process flows, and while in the revenue discussion, I thought it'd be appropriate to ask you these questions. So how do you manage the towns if Sunapee says I want to have A and B, and Wilmot says I want to have C and D, and Sutton says I want to have B and C? How do you manage that from the point of view of budget allocation and even administering what it is you're providing for service?
It's a little bit, I think, simpler than that. All of the towns opted into the police records management system.
Yep.
Only 2 of the 5 towns opted into the fire records management system. So there is kind of one way for us to say to those 2 towns, okay, you will be responsible for the maintenance of that program, of the cost of the fire records management program. So that'll be, I don't know how to say this, taken off the top, if you will, and allocated to those 2 towns, and then it'll be divided evenly amongst the 5 remaining, or not evenly, but how we typically do it based on calls for
So
service.
it's the agent, when you made that comment, you're talking about the agencies that will be leveraging the system within each town?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Some towns have different capabilities, like one town is able to have another feature, but that's not a responsibility of ours. That's a separate scope of work that they'll do with that, with the company.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's some other ways to make sure that, and I'll have to sit down certainly with Lynn and with Kim to make sure that we have all of that worked out, but essentially that's how it's going to work.
Okay, okay. And you, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you made a comment that it's difficult to switch,
Yeah.
for a town to switch over. Now, I know that Croydon, left us, right, and went off to, I don't know where they went, somewhere else. What's difficult, if we have towns who are using and able and capable of using and experienced in using the same system that you're using, why is it difficult for them maybe to switch over to Hanover? And the reason why I'm asking this is, again, for security of our revenue stream, right? I mean, if people can quickly leave, we're holding more of that cost, right?
Okay, sure. And I guess, I don't mean to answer your question with a question, but what is the constant reference to Hanover? I don't know that we're really apples to apples with Hanover. We have a much different population size, much different police department size. So I guess I want to just make sure that we're not making a statement of, this is Hanover.
No,
here's
so-
New London always. So I want to make sure that it's a fair comparison if you're going to use examples.
So the only reason I use Hanover in this particular question is because I know that they're using the same software system you are.
Yes, as is State Police, as is Grafton County, as
So you
are
could use any one,
several
right?
others. Okay.
If Wilmot is using us for for dispatch, and they want to move over to any one of those players that are using the similar
Sure.
capability, why is that difficult?
Well, I don't know if the difficult part was those other towns deciding to leave, should they ever decide to leave, but the difficult thing for us to do is first, I think we need to ask, does New London want to get rid of our dispatch center? And I don't think that's the case. But for those towns to leave, they have to make sure that they're willing to make that kind of a switch. It's a pretty big undertaking to leave, especially when you depend on that dispatch center if you have a high call volume. So certainly any town could say to us, no, I think we're going to look elsewhere, we're going to do this, and that actually happened not too long ago, which was kind of the impetus for me looking into this new software so that I could maintain and retain, rather, these customers that we currently have.
All right.
So, and again, part of the impetus for me applying for that big grant and trying to maintain a competitive dispatch center so that we could keep our customers, keep them happy, and keep that revenue stream coming or going for the town of New London.
Yeah.
I think I lost your question. What was the question?
I was trying to get
leaving,
I was trying to get some clarity on
Leaving. If somebody decided to leave?
the cost of switching, right? If it's hard to move, because you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, when you take a look at our dispatch center, we're only recovering 37% of our costs from the other players. The dispatch center's cost now is about $750,000 in this year's budget. At the current rate, it's going to be about $1 million in about 4 years. And the question is, are those 4 players that we're working now, is if they see those costs increasing and they look at alternatives that are less expensive, is their cost or ability to switch difficult or easy?
I think it depends on your town, and it depends on your
Okay.
capabilities of your town and the willingness of that department to make a change like that.
Okay.
Some towns I've heard in the past don't want to split up their emergency services, if you will. So if a town's police department's wanting to switch, but a town's fire department is very happy with their service, I think it depends, and I don't mean to be coy with my
you're
answer, but
not.
I think
No.
it truly just depends. So my efforts over the past few years since I've been the chief have been really focused on the dispatch center, because I recognize that that's a good, I don't know if that's the right word, but a revenue stream for the town, because it costs money to run it. There's personnel and there's operating costs. And so my intent with making improvements in the dispatch center, bringing a new software so that we can remain competitive. And again, that software is not just for another department, it's for the town of New London. So that we can remain competitive and have something that we're able to sustain over time. I haven't done a thorough analysis into what you're talking about, but outside of personnel costs, I don't know that the dispatch budget has increased that exponentially over the past few years. You see a big jump in that one line item this year, but again, that's for the maintenance costs, and we're locked into that price, that $55,000.
5 years, right?
For 5 years, right.
Right.
So, again, that was something that I was able to accomplish by paying for that other chunk up front. But I recognize that that's a revenue source for the town, and I want to hopefully maintain that so that the folks here in New London aren't having to pay too much more. You mentioned that I think it's 37% the other towns are responsible for, but again, I offer, and we've had this conversation, but New London is the busiest of those agencies. We run a 24/7 police officer. The other towns, some of them are home on call, some of them put state police on call. So we're the busiest, so therefore we're going to pay for it.
Yep. Okay. Yep, thank you. Anybody have any other questions of revenue? No? Thank you, Chief, appreciate it. Okay, other business. Anybody want to introduce other business before I go into my list of other business? No? So if we could we go through the agenda again, the schedule? Kim, you sent out a revised list of, that's on the,
Right, so I sent out your remaining schedule, so
yeah.
I believe you've all agreed to switch to January 19th for next week's meeting, okay?
Is everyone okay with that? When I saw emails coming in, I didn't do the count. It's a
Friday night?
At
I think-
5 o'clock.
I think Chris said something about bringing something. Chris
Yeah.
is bringing something. What's that? Happy hour? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, right. That'll make a really productive meeting.
Tell me.
Probably the best one we've had.
It would be the best meeting we had, I know. So it would be 5 o'clock to 7 plus, I think I saw. Chris also, he and I exchanged emails, and he said he was going to send an email out, but I haven't seen it, and maybe he's changed his mind, but I'll raise it for you anyway. If people are interested in perhaps developing questions in advance of the meeting, so that, you know, it's all in our minds when we get in here instead of going through it in detail. If people are interested in doing that, Kim, would you be willing to correlate, bring those together and
Yep.
send them back out? Go ahead, please.
Along with that, Kim, might be the discussion we had on the recommendation of the petition article. I was almost going to ask you to go through that tonight, just so people could be prepared and how you think about it and so forth, but I think that's going to be one that needs some real explaining, so.
Yep, so for that next meeting, I have on the agenda capital reserves or the capital outlays. And I also put other warrant articles, and one of them will be the petition. We could get more between now and then, and the deadline is February 6th. So you might even have another one as late as the night before your meeting, your public hearing, because that is the state deadline.
And you had indicated that the select board has the flexibility to introduce a warrant on the article, an article on the warrant 2 weeks thereafter?
The selectmen don't have a deadline of February 6th. What they have for a deadline is your public hearing. So if your public hearing is on February 7th, which I hope it is, that's the deadline for them to add any money article. They could add a non-money article right up until the day they post it. They generally don't, because they like to get their warrant done the same night the public hearing of the budget is done, because then it all goes to the printer.
And does the budget committee have to vote on all money articles?
And so do the selectmen, both.
So that would happen at the public hearing, should they do it
Generally, at
after
the
last
public
meeting?
hearing, if you haven't already made motions on your various articles, that's the night you do it.
And we would do that as a budget committee, and the select board would do it as a select board, and we do it separately at that meeting. Okay? Okay.
What we've often done at the public hearing is the selectmen are sitting, after you folks adjourn your meeting, the selectmen hold a meeting right after that, and they finish up the warrant then.
One of the things that, so I hope that we get through the reserves in one meeting, though I do believe, based on conversations, based on the work that I've been working on and the amount of questions that may be playing out, particularly as it relates to trying to get to the strategy and relating what we're doing with the strategy. I don't know whether we'll do it in one meeting. When does a reconciliation meeting happen? If there needs to be a reconciliation?
If there is a reconciliation meeting, there may not be. I mean, it depends. If the selectmen decide, if you go along with all the selectmen's recommendations, or if you don't, and the selectmen may decide either not to try and have a reconciliation meeting, or they may just decide, we'll go along with the budget committee.
So if there is a need, how does that work into the schedule?
Well, it depends. We'll have to figure out when you're done, when we actually know that there are differences.
Okay.
And then I could call the selectmen together. They could decide, do we need a reconciliation meeting or not?
Okay, all right. So if we have to have another meeting somewhere in there, we do. All right. I just had a few, for purposes of, so we're prepared next week, if people indulge me, and if they want to not indulge me, that's okay too. On the capital reserves, there's one area, a couple questions I want to make sure that we have clarity to as we walk into the meeting. The $100,000 for office space reorganization expansion for the Academy building, as I understand that reserve budget, it has to do with maintenance, and I think that's more of a capital upgrade, not maintenance. Has that expenditure been reviewed with the trustees?
No, there are no plans for it yet, so we have not gone through the trustees yet.
Well, since we're potentially allocating money in the budget that could otherwise be allocated somewhere else, if indeed it's deemed not to be maintenance, can we get that resolved in advance?
What money do you think you're allocating in the budget, the $100,000 that's going into the,
Right now, there's a placeholder for $100,000 for the office space reorganization, expansion, and security upgrades. That's the Academy building, I assume,
right?
right? So if the trustees were to say, no, that's not maintenance, I would argue that that $100,000 should be allocated somewhere else. To the extent we could know that in advance, we would have $100,000 to work on
Right.
somewhere else.
And I'm not sure I would argue that. We've been trying to put either $50,000 or $100,000 into that account every year because there are things that come up in the various buildings that we're not planning on. So I don't think I would say cut that down. And in fact, I was thinking that they may have to use ARPA funds or some other funds to do, depending on what the Academy building upgrades end up being. We don't have a quote on it yet. But, excuse me, I think that even if the selectmen decide not to do the Academy building, we need money in our accounts to do upgrades for various buildings.
So I guess what I'm getting, maybe we're just talking past each other, and if I'm the one who's not getting it, just tell me to be quiet. The reserve account talks about town building maintenance. I define maintenance in a very specific way. Upgrades are not maintenance. So if you need to have money put aside for upgrades, you either have to create another reserve or get them all together and
Sure.
float a bond for those. So
Right.
So $100,000 for things that might be upgrades versus maintenance, shouldn't be in this bucket, is my point. If I'm right and the trustees agree with that. I don't know.
Right. We can find out, sure.
Okay.
But again, I'm thinking that the 100,000 would be the minimum you'd want to put into that particular capital reserve, period,
For maintenance, town maintenance.
for maintenance, yeah,
Okay, which is different. That's building maintenance.
right.
Okay. If that's what you're suggesting, then that's different than the line item. Right? I'm just reading the line item.
Capital, the CIP,
I'm reading,
yeah, that was, yeah, in the I think it was in the CIP as that.
yeah, okay. Fire department roof on this page shows 42,000, but it's not in line with any year. So has that been done or not been done? It's done? Okay, okay. Just to give everyone a perspective for next week, one of the things, if you weren't at the select board meeting, one of the things that Bill Helm talked about was struggling with what do you bond and what do you put in reserves. And that struggle came up in two conversations. One was with respect to the energy solar panel purchases, and the other one was the library, I'll call it the envelope wrap, the windows and the roof and all that sort of thing. And Bill is concerned about, and I would encourage you to go back and take a look at the select board's video. And please keep me honest, right? He's concerned about the level of bonding that we might want to incur because the library came in and said we should bond that $350,000 because of all the things that are pending in front of us. And he was concerned about the fiscal policy. So I would ask that maybe we get the fiscal policy out to everybody. The fiscal policy talks about anything that's over $250,000 in 5 years should be bonded. And it talks about a 1% of the general fund. Now, I don't know how that's defined. I don't know if that's a general fund with or without the bond principal and interest, or if it's just the operating fund. But at some point, and I'll put this in writing, I think we need to really understand where we are with respect to the fiscal policies measure on that 1% on our bonding. If I looked at the numbers, if I interpret them correctly, we're about 40% of that one. Right, we got an $11 million budget, 10% is $1 million. If you add up the principal interest, it's about $400-something thousand. So it gives us room for $600,000 more debt. And the question is, how much debt is that on the current rate? Is that $10 million of debt? Is that $5 million of debt? Because I think when we take a look at the things that we want to fund next year and going forward, we should take a look at 2 or 3 years out and ask questions about what's playing out and what are we going to be finding ourselves faced with debt and how we want to play that debt out against the capital reserves. And I'll try to put something together to help us walk through it, but I think it's an important conversation that we have. So if we can get the fiscal policy out to everybody, I think it'd be helpful, because that needs to be part of our conversation.
Yeah, it says shall not exceed 10% of the annual general fund budget of the town.
So so is that, when you look at the general fund line on the
Yeah.
budget sheet, that follows,
So this year, well, so far we have 11,978,744 for this.
so the general fund total actually follows the transfers to capital reserves and the capital outlays, all that's included in the 10%, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means that we can't have principal and interest over $1 million, over 10%, is that what, $1 million?
$1 million.
Right?
Yep.
And I think our current principal interest is like 450.
I'm just asking, is the point to gauge whether the rate of inflation towards a product or a project is higher than our interest on a bond or a loan would be?
Well, I mean, that would be one area, but I was really thinking more of if we didn't bond, if we didn't put in capital reserves the library request, and we bonded it,
Correct.
then that would leave $370,000, whatever that number is, $250,000, to be allocated to other strategic capital reserve issues. So if we increase our bond by $350,000 by floating an article in the warrant, that would give us $350,000 to play with to put them on the other strategic initiatives, like sidewalks or whatever, right? So it's playing around between bond and reserves, and how much can we, does it make sense? First, does it pass the red face test for a bond, $250,000, 5 years? And the second one would be, if you actually bonded it, does it put us above the level? If it doesn't, okay. But how does that additional bonding this year going to impact what is going to come down the road 2 or 3 years from now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I guess, so historically, if we're referencing this one particular project, the roof,
Right.
we look at the last 10 years of roof inflation costs and then gauge that between whatever rate we can lock in on a bond. I'm more about the simple math and the,
Yeah.
making it convoluted, because that way you can explain to taxpayers why
Agreed.
we chose that method.
I agree. Yeah. Please, Joe.
Joe Cardell. It's back. The voice is back. I'm sorry. It's been going a long time. Again, this is just talking out loud conversationally. Fiscal policy, what you might implement or can't implement. I was under the impression with the new car registration that we were controlled by what the legislature did, but they set a limit of $10 that we've never attained. I would suggest that's something we should probably implement. It's a great, it's low-hanging fruit. The car registration is one of our largest sources of revenue. I think the Budget Committee should be involved in some of these conversations, whether it's how you set rates for dispatch or whether it's time to implement it, go from $5 to $10. It's something we can do that's easy. Rooms and meals tax, just, again, that's something we can't control. It's whatever the state gives. It has no correlation on who's eating in town or not eating in town. It's not our restaurants and hotels are doing better or worse, so we're getting more or less. But a thought just occurred to me after attending the deliberative session. And other than BB and myself, there were a few others that were there. We don't always get a big turnout. And it's something I had never thought about, but it's something the district does, whether it's something I think it has to be a specific implementation. And where I'm going with this is the district is no different than what we do in having reserve funds for certain situations, all right? The middle school bond, there's a bond, right? You're going to do it. We're almost done with that bond. We have reserve funds, and then we bond other stuff. But there's always a discussion about two separate expendable trust funds that are funded through surplus. We always have a surplus that are funded through surpluses at the end of the day. What do we do with our surplus? Well, we take some of it to defray, or to lower our tax rate. The selectmen decide whether that's 250 or this year 450 to bring the tax rate down. But again, just conversationally, I'm throwing this out there. Is there an ability to create, and the one project that comes to mind is otherwise we'd be chasing a lot of different projects, is if the town truly did vote on energy efficiency by a certain time, and we know that we've got $1 million down the road that we're going to have to deal with to buy back solar panels, et cetera, can we create an expendable fund that's an expendable account that's only funded through surplus to a certain amount? Like, for example, we chose $100,000. What are the two? One's for the roof, and the other one is, and they both have a limit.
Yeah, but they voted to up to $100,000 if there is $100,000.
If there's a $100,000 surplus,
Mhm.
and it's only if there's a surplus, we
Right.
would put that money to an expendable trust.
I-
And it seems like a way we can attack, because sitting in that last selectmen's meeting, the thing that hit me was someone comes in for a roof, and we're saying, no, we don't have the money for the roof at the library. We're talking about solar panels. We're going to have to, figure out a different way to skin the cat. Listen, we are sort of paying for going from $1 million going to reserve funds down to 500 last year. We got to catch up, right? So that's one reason we're going to have an increase this year. But to get creative going forward, I don't know that there's anything that prohibits us as a municipal board to create a fund that if we just specifically took the solar panels and said, if there's a surplus, we'll take $100,000 this year and put it towards a buyout. What prevents us from doing the same thing?
Nothing. Town meeting has used surplus in the past. I think the most recent time was the time we did the 7,000 for the park and ride, and the warrant article said to come from unreserved fund balance. Voters can do pretty much anything they want. If they want to spend down the unreserved fund balance at town meeting, they can.
And again, I think it's just another arrow. You could put in the arsenal. It's just another way of saying, all right, we always have a surplus. It appears, for whatever reasons. We won't get critical on whether we're, cutting our budgets as tight as we should be or looking at it. But there's always a surplus, and we should be able to use that surplus on a regular basis for specific projects, whether you chose the sidewalks or you chose the solar panels or something that we know is coming down the pike that we're going to have to address, and we can't deal with it with reserve funds right now, and we can't deal with it with bonding right now. So it's something I'd like you to get into your conversation as a budget committee as another tool that you can use. Again, I'm blanking on what the second one is. One is roofs, but it doesn't matter. It's the method. It doesn't matter what it's for.
Yeah.
And they've set a limit. In other words, the roof, if there's $100,000 extra right now, it's going to bring us up to $900 and something thousand, but it's not to exceed $1.5 million.
Right.
So we could do that with the solar panels. If there's $100,000, or if we choose to say up to $200,000, because we know we need to accelerate using some of the reserves. I'd like that conversation to be, bantered about a little bit on how we can, again, keep the budget at a reasonable growth level, but use other sources, which would be surplus funds, to address things that we know are coming down the pike.
Any questions or comments? I think that's a good idea, and when you look at the new sheets that Kim passed out today, I asked that some of the below-the-line items be added there, because, in fact, I think my list is actually minor compared to what, I went back and looked at my notes from what Bill talked about. Bill talked about things we'd have to be thinking about in the future is police station, sidewalks, water capacity. Some might say, well, that's up to the Springfield, New London Water Precinct. They have made it very clear that the next level of water capacity procurement, if we need it, it's going to cost anywhere between 10 and 20 million, and they will not be doing that. It will require collaboration from the town. Communication tower, Main Street design, records management, conservation, fire department expansion.
Transfer station.
So the list is never ending. And my experience around here has been that every year it's episodic. We look at this year without looking into the future, and we're not playing out the reserve versus bonding issue. So to the extent that we can do a shift this year and do some strategic thoughts around what do we want to bond, how does that free up money for reserves, maybe something that Joe talked about, it might give us more flexibility and help the town understand where we're heading, keeping in mind that we've got these things coming at us. And these things aren't cheap. This will break our bank. And I think it's important, in my one person's opinion, considering the feedback that we're receiving from people on the tax impact of the reassessments. And listen, there's nothing we can do to stop the value of homes going up in this town, and taxes are contributed by the cost of running the town. So I think we need to show purpose to the citizens that we're doing something for them.
You know, on that, it all goes back to having a plan that would prevent us from running with our head, with our head on fire. If we can forecast in 20 years, when we anticipate having like 10,000 people. So this is what we need to do: have a water system that can meet the demands. To have a fire department that can meet the demands. Considering that it's aging out, that we may end up having to have at least some of it full-time instead of instead of volunteer. So yeah, I'm on board, and I think it would be nice to put those things in plan with targets and metrics and stuff that we can achieve to allow us to plan ahead in a more leisurely and cogent fashion than we're doing right now.
I agree.
I have a comment.
Please, PV, yep.
I am all about planning ahead. That's the company that I work for, that's what we teach companies how to do, right? But I'd like to ask John's opinion on this. John's been on the Budget Committee the longest of anybody. Historically, have you had those conversations? Was this done in the past where there was planning out ahead, looking out 10 years at what projects might be coming down the pike?
I'm supposed to remember? Oh, okay. Yeah, no. I mean, it's pretty much as Colin said, we respond to things, but that's a two-sided thing, we might not be planning, but quite often we're not presented with the catastrophes until the last moment too, so, yeah.
Yep.
ARPA funds, are they available to the 2025 budget? Can we allocate ARPA to some of our budget issues?
Yeah, the selectmen have not allocated a little less than 50% of it.
The budget
So they
committee
still
has
have
no
to make
authority
those
to allocate any of that?
decisions. You can definitely give recommendations to the selectmen, sure.
So can you offer us? it doesn't have to be
You
now.
can't pay down debt with it.
Yeah.
There are certain things you can't do, but purchasing things, I think Newbury did their police station with their opera
And the
fund.
money has to be spent by 2026.
Right, but it has to be committed this year, so we have to actually tell the government, these are the things we're going to use it for.
So as part of our exercise in reserves, we could take a look at
If they're
potentially
purchased, we
employing
know.
ARPA funds.
Right, that's why I said the academy building upgrades could be used with ARPA funds.
There's about
Some of the
190,000
studies-
left?
Yeah, I think about it. Yeah.
And it's fairly flexible as to what we can use it for?
Yeah, but are things you can't, paying down debt, retirement things.
About 190,000.
We started out with a little over 400, and 50% was allocated to sewer and water.
That's helpful. So that's something we can put into our bag of tricks as well, right? Okay.
Make an addendum to my sleepy remarks. Certainly, like the fire department and the public works have predicted replacement and so forth. So there is a deal of looking at in the fire department and so forth. We're looking at many years, and so yes, I would say with regard to that, but leaky roofs and things like that, or rehabbing buildings or maintaining them, I think we're come up short there, so.
Okay, I have two other items. One is the action item. The other one, action items at the end of every meeting. And the other one is, I just want to put on the record, and I know this is going to sound worse than it is, but I do feel it's important that the Budget Committee members who didn't go to the Select Board meeting on budgeting hear a little bit about what played out there. So and I told Chief Cobb I was going to bring this to the table. So when the Select Board asked each of the department heads what they would do if they were to cut the money or add money, Chief Cobb actually provided answers differently than what she provided last week to us. My notes indicated that if the money were increased, the chief would add more money in technology, CAD, RMS, or personnel. And if the money was decreased, the chief would look for less training, less expensive training versus going to leadership training and delay a cruiser. And I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
I think I mentioned the cruiser
Yep.
at the meeting last week.
No, you didn't. It's in the minutes too. You
Okay.
didn't, no.
Well, if I didn't, then
It's okay. I just want to make sure
apologize,
that people hear that the
Sure.
stories are on both, on the same.
Yeah, and that was certainly the first that I had received that question at the Selectmen's meeting, so I was a little bit taken aback by it. But as I sat at the Budget Committee members and I heard the question asked again of other department heads, I feel like the essence of the question was getting lost a little bit, and the intent behind it, I might be incorrect, was not really captured. And so that was my intent behind that statement a couple, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, is that, again, I feel like I've presented a budget, and it felt kind of like the department heads were trying to nickel and dime out of which line item could I take $1,000, and which item could I take $500, and some of the bigger ticket items, I don't know, paving or some of the equipment that the fire chief needs for his folks, those are more expensive. But I felt like the question and the intent behind the question was getting a little bit lost. And so that was really the purpose of my statement to the Budget Committee. So that's all I have, I guess, about that.
No, thank you. No, listen, I just wanted to make sure that they heard what I heard so that we have that information in our pocket. It's not going to be any secret. I'm going to bring it to the table. There may be others who bring things to the table, some motions for cost reduction. I think that the citizenry that's been impacted by the tax increases some of them are angst, and I think that the community is going through. I think we're going through some pretty strategic changes. I think that I'll get on a soapbox for a moment. We're going through our method of gentrification, right? It's like the Bronx townhouses, right? Someone buys a townhouse and redoes it over, and the price triples, and all the townhouses down the street triple, and the people who have lived there their whole life have to move out. And so there's nothing we can do to control real estate prices here. Nothing, right? Nothing we can do about it. The only thing we can control is our costs, and I think that we should take the effort to do that. So. Action items, if I can go through this, no further action on the water precinct as far as monitoring how are they going to get the work scheduled for, do we have a settled date on when they're going to do that work? We do not.
I was so much more clear when we just had the meeting. I believe it was January 6th, the RFP went out. Beginning of February is when they'll be opening up the bids, so they have sufficient time before their annual meeting in March to allocate funds. And then end of April, beginning of May for the start of the project, with sensitivity for Colby Sawyer's graduation, which is usually the first full or second weekend in May, in conjunction with the intricacies of the barn playhouse and what that looks like, and also temporary water that would need to be established. So they do have a timeline. It's just really contingent upon who they receive for contractors and what those contractors look like with regards to size and individuals that they can throw out the project. 3 phases. It may be not necessarily in order. It might be 1 and 3, but that's what they're looking for, to install right around 5,800 feet of pipe.
Commencement is May 4th.
Thank you, Lindsay.
So the reason for my asking is, I've put aside, because we've all learned about the corridor studies bigger than just sidewalks, right? Should we be making assumptions for our reserves on Main Street sidewalks being done in 2025? Or should we wait till 2026?
We have 170,000, I think Bob asked for out of the, how much, 120? No, so we already have $120,000 that Bob estimated a couple of years ago to put towards it. Whether we need some more.
That was passed last year, right?
The recommendation from the engineer was to hold off on doing anything. They're going to bond that project, so it could be 2026 before we can even touch it. We don't want to have anything to do with that, because then we own it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then, Kim, I think the last one was getting committees that are working in these.
Yeah, I'll have that information. I'll sit down with Adam before next week's meeting.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you for your patience with me. John, please.
Deliberative session where Joe alluded to the expenditure fund, et cetera. Have you been given a copy of, or a breakdown of all the future expenses of the buildings, et cetera, the roof, et cetera? And the reason I bring it up is when I brought that question up to the Kearsarge Regional School District, they're working on that also, and all of their schools apparently in the next 3 years are going to need new roofs, et cetera. And then I brought up solar energy also, and that being a component of that for the school district. And with the budget at $54 million and a $3 million, approximate $3 million increase, I wondered if you've been given a breakdown of the potential expenditures that departments would have, buildings would have, et cetera. I believe the request is on record from 2.5 months ago for that to be done, and I didn't know if you've been given that breakdown to help answer, I think, some of the questions that we're going to discuss on the 19th for the capital reserve funds and bonding.
So, and people please weigh in. John, I think the answer to that question is we have the CIP. We have the department heads' input through the CIP as well as the reserves on what their needs are. And we anticipate with the asset management tool that Bob is going to be funded for to gather all the right information on all of our town buildings that will get us a better handle on what monies we need to put aside going forward. But we don't have that study done yet to know what to put down. So Kim was talking about putting 100K in, you know, as a stopgap measure or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So the short answer, Chris, is no, we don't have it. The long answer is we're going to get it, but not this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, it's 8:34. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Have a great evening.
Nay.